There we go. All right, we call this meeting to order. Just want to note that Commissioner Shu contacted me. He will not be here tonight. So do I have a motion to approve the work session agenda? All right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, 4-0. That passed. All right. All right, first action is, I guess we have no changes to the agenda, so just no action items, discussion. First, we have our county manager. We have a construction manager at risk delivery method discussion, Mr. Michael Miller.
That's right. As Michael comes up and Jason from the Messer Company, we just, after seeing some comments and questions about the renovation progress for the renovation contract for Progress Place, just wanted to do some overview of what a contractor at risk contract looks like and just general informational for the commissioners. So,
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, and good afternoon. As Sean said, this is Jason Harris. Some of you know him. He's with Messer Construction.
Yeah, nice to see you all again.
He's a senior project executive there. And although we do have some projects going on with Messer right now, Jason is here more in support of me tonight as a subject matter expert on the construction manager at risk delivery method. So I've got some slides here. Got to turn it on first. Okay, so in 2001, the North Carolina General Assembly approved the CM at risk method of delivery for public projects in an effort to expand the options available to public agencies for project delivery. In addition to CM at risk, other options are design, bid, build, which is more of a conventional method of what we're probably most familiar with. Design build, which is where we, the county, would contract directly with a joint venture architect and contractor. To my knowledge, we've not ever done that as Cabarrus County. Another option is public-private partnership, which is what we did out at the Afton Library and Active Living Center. CM at risk is typically used for large, complex projects requiring a high level of construction management due to multiple phases, technical complexity, or multidisciplinary coordination. And the ACN renovation is not the first time we've used CM at risk. We did it over at the Sheriff's Office and Detention Center, the Board of Elections, the courthouse across the street, the Governmental Center skylight replacement, Behavioral Health Care Center, which is currently under construction, EMS headquarters, and the Mount Pleasant Library and Active Living Center at Virginia Fuller Park. I think those are the only ones we've done CM at risk on. So what is CM at risk? Under the CM at risk agreement, the construction manager, who is required to be a licensed general contractor, provides construction management services and guarantees the cost of the project. The term at risk refers to the construction manager assuming or bearing the risk of delivering the project at or within the guaranteed maximum price. And for example, some of those risks may include things like performance and financial stability of the subcontractors, fluctuations in material prices, weather, schedule, just lots of different variables. And the CM at risk process really, it's a shift of the traditional owner-contractor relationship, like I said, we were most familiar with, and it integrates this construction manager into the design phase and promotes collaboration.
Yeah, I would say in the industry, things are moving far more this way. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades now, and when I first started in the industry, this was maybe 20% of our portfolio. I would say it's probably 85 to 90% of our portfolio now. Many public clients and private clients see this as the best way to deliver a project.
This next slide is just some verbiage straight from the statute, and it says construction manager services include preparation and coordination of bid packages, scheduling, cost control, value engineering, material and product evaluation, pre-construction services, and construction administration. So that's straight from the statute there. So once we decide we're going to use a construction manager at risk, the first step is onboarding. And the statute requires that we use a qualifications-based selection process. And what that means is we post a request for qualifications on the website. And that's kind of a summary of the project, what we want to do, what type of building we're going to build, so forth and so on. And interested firms such as Messer or other contractors will submit what's called a statement of qualifications. It's really just a resume for their company, and it'll have the company history and profile, their tailored project approach. It might have org chart and just bios on specific people that are going to be working on the project. Anything I missed?
Yeah, key members for the team. It might have a preliminary schedule included or some estimate of cost, maybe an opinion of cost for a project. There can be a number of things that the county might request on contractors to bring to the table. The state also requires this when we're selecting items on qualifications. So third-party services, envelope consultants, schedule consultants, those types of services where they're not based on a set cost, but yet a value. It's the state requires the same process of us.
And one thing we always look for or ask for is project experience on a similar type project.
right.
Whether if we're going to build an EMS headquarters, have you built an EMS headquarters or anything like that?
Right.
In the past.
Right.
And while all that's happening in the background, the county, we're putting together an internal committee who will review those statement of qualifications packages, and that will be made up of county staff, myself, usually representation from the county manager's office. In the past, board members have been on the committee. Usually an end user, so if we're building a park, somebody from the Parks Department or Active Living and Parks Department will be involved, or our library, whichever department it's going to be. And we usually do include a member of the design team, although they don't get a vote. They're just there for input and review of the statement of qualification packages, but they don't vote on the final selection. And so once we choose somebody, we negotiate a pre-construction services contract and present that to the board. And that's the agreement you guys approved last month. That's your regular meeting. Any questions so far? Okay. The next phase is pre-construction. In my opinion, this is a value to the CM at risk process.
Yeah.
So the construction manager is brought in on board at or before beginning design phases. And they act as a consultant to us and to the designer. So during the design phase, the CM will perform such services as a detailed cost estimate, evaluation of the design based on their knowledge and experience. And, they'll provide a solution to a problem or maybe an opinion about how we should do things differently.
That's right.
We call that a constructability review. I don't know if that's a real word or not. Constructability.
That's a technical term.
There you go. So he'll also develop a schedule at this point and look for potential delays that we need to try to work around.
Right.
And then creation of bid packages. They start the pre-qualification of the bidding, and then as the design sort of wraps up, they're working on solicitation of bids, and that all generates an estimated cost or a guaranteed maximum price, which is GMP.
Yeah, the other thing I would add, and it's kind of outlined in here, but it's our job to work with the designer that the owner has hired, in this case, the county, to work towards a budget, right? You have a budget in mind for the work. It's our job to work with the designer to make sure that the cost of the work as it's going to be implemented aligns with that budget. That's really our job.
So the next phase is construction. You guys have approved a GMP contract, and all the legal requirements are met. And so we start things such as procurement of long lead time items. What that means is, anything that we've identified is going to take 12 or 18 months to get, such as mechanical equipment or electrical gear.
Generators, air handlers, chillers. There's a number of items in the market now, really post-COVID, that have become just kind of the standard is they take 40, 50, 60 weeks to get. And that drives the duration of a job. You can't finish a job until those things are there, tested, functional, and able to be inspected for a final to be turned over. So it's a big driver on a lot of jobs today.
So that's one of the first things that's identified, just to avoid schedule conflicts and prolonging that. And then contractors will mobilize on the site. You start seeing things like, fences going up around the perimeter, job trailers, site work, utility installation. You're just really getting the ball rolling there. And then pretty soon after that, vertical construction starts, and that's when the construction manager, at that point, they're responsible for all aspects of the work, including cost, schedule, quality. And one way we do that is we have a weekly or bi-weekly meeting with the owner, architect, and contractor. So everybody's kind of just making sure things are staying on track,
That's right.
especially to see them. And then fast forward 12 or 18 months, depending on what you built. Post-construction, with CM at risk, it's not really any different than any other project delivery method. It's also kind of the closeout phase right there. You're doing things like final inspections, transferring utilities into the county's name. Owner training is a big one at this point, so they're kind of showing us how to operate building systems and how things work. We'll also receive our warranties and get a marked up set of as-built drawings, and just get ready to accept and occupy the building. Now, I've got something on here about a shared savings program, and what that is it's a negotiated rate at which, at the end of project, if there's leftover money and contingencies or allowances, ahead of time, it's agreed upon between the owner and the construction manager that they're going to split those savings, whether it's 50-50 or 60-40, whatever. It's an incentive for the construction manager to save money. However, Cabarrus County has never done that. We require that all the savings come back to the county.
Most of our clients don't do that anymore. That was a thing that was used pretty prevalently early on in the use of CM at risk, but a lot of owners see it as a perverse incentive for contractors to manage the money in a selfish way. And so while we would never do that, that has kind of swayed people away from that. It's not really a thing anymore.
From the time I was involved with CM at risk contracts, which goes back 10 years or so, we've never done a shared savings program. So. All that said, I believe that there are a lot of benefits to using CM at risk method. The first one is probably the biggest, and it's the certainty of the GMP. I mean, it's a guaranteed cost for the project. The next benefit, as I mentioned already a little bit, was early participation with the designer and the owner, and it helps with planning, constructability, and it really creates a team mentality and a team approach and just a collaborative approach to the project in general. There's less risk of cost overrun when the CM at risk is involved in planning and design. There's also a potential for faster delivery. One way we do that is with that long lead time item. We might actually do a GMP specifically for that and call it GMP 1 just to get the ball rolling, and then GMP 2 will be the balance of the project.
Yeah, that or a design that allows for a site development package to move forward and all your
Right.
site utilities while the balance of the building is being built. There's a lot of efficiencies that you can have by bringing a contractor in early and working with the designer on how they're going to deliver the product in a way that allows the building to get built most quickly.
And in general, there's a higher quality of work. That's from the subs and the construction manager based on the pre-qualification process and the qualifications-based selection. I just listed a few more advantages here that, after reading what I wrote, may be a little redundant based on the last slide, but the CM at risk method allows the owner to interview and select a construction manager based on qualifications. There's continuous budget control. Subcontractors, again, they're pre-qualified, ensuring quality and experience. The subcontractors, all those packages are competitively bid. There's improved coordination between the design team and contractor. That's that whole collaborative approach I was talking about. This is a big one. Changes in scope during the design can immediately be priced by the CM to determine the impact on budget. And we can make a decision whether to proceed or not proceed with that change. And kind of summing it up, the CM at risk method should reduce the costly change orders during construction since they were involved in the design process.
Yeah, absolutely. And to Michael's point, the design, the cost during the design, usually we'll use a tool to manage that process along the way. Here are the items we've discussed, whether they've been accepted or rejected, what that immediately does to your budget for the job. There's a very collaborative way we try to manage that to make sure that there's visibility throughout the process so people understand how the impacts of those decisions are going to affect the overall project.
This next slide is where the and more part of my presentation comes in. And so it's titled OSIP versus CSIP, and that's an owner-controlled insurance program versus a contractor-controlled insurance program. Essentially, this is the way that insurance coverage is handled for the project. For projects such as Behavioral Health Care Center, the courthouse, the Mount Pleasant Library and Active Living Center at Virginia Fulton Park, and others, we've utilized the CSIP, which is also what we plan to use on the renovations for the ACM building. The CSIP is when all of the insurance coverage is sort of wrapped up into one consolidated package and managed by a single entity, which in this case will be the construction manager. Many counties / owners utilize an OSIP or standard type of coverage and that is really to retain oversight. And we could certainly do that, but it would come with a burden of a large expense up front, in addition to the administration, claims management, and financial reporting for the policy. Also, loss exposure is greater with the OSIP and remains for years to come after the project's over. On recent projects, the CSIP has been more than just insurance, and Jason can talk to this, but it's included the overall safety project or safety program for the project.
Yep. Yeah, so, I mean, there's definitely an incentive for us when there's a CSIP program in place. You know, in the case of the projects Michael's referring to, that means we're covering the workers' compensation and general liability for all workers on site, right? Everyone, all the subcontractors, all their lower tiers, everyone, with few exceptions. There's some demolition and some high-risk scopes that don't get covered. But generally, all those are being covered. So there's an incentive for us as a contractor to ensure that there's a higher bar for those workers that are going to be on site. So we require OSHA 10s of all workers. That's really not a thing. We require OSHA 30s for all foremen. We require a drug screen within 90 days of you starting on site. We also do quarterly drug screens of all workers on site. So those are just a few of the ways that we're trying to raise the bar of the workers that are coming to the site, make sure that they're going to come out of that job and home to their families the same way they showed up to us each day. So that's a big part of the program is limiting the exposure, limiting the risk to ourselves, the workers on site, and also the county as the client.
In terms of cost, with the CSIP on this particular project, it's provided at market rate, and that's primarily due to the volume of work that Messer's doing.
Right.
The rates are established at the beginning of the project, and they're in a contract, and they're not subject to change.
Right, they're locked in from the time the contract is signed.
And coverage is always reviewed during the contract review process by risk management in-house. And that helps to eliminate any potential gaps in coverage.
That's right.
So
Yeah, the first one of these we did, an employee who's no longer with the county did a review with y'all's risk department to determine the validity of those two programs and cost comparison. We actually use the same carriers. Messer obviously manages a far larger amount across our footprint of construction on an annual basis than the county does. And so we can get a very competitive rate for that and provide an equal or higher standard of coverage for your jobs, which is a net value for the county.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So even though we use the same surety to provide the insurance coverage, they're buying it cheaper than we can at the county.
Yeah.
Okay, I went through a lot there. What questions do you have?
So I was actually one of the things I was going to ask you was about if the CSIP is more expensive. But obviously, since you guys get a better rate,
Right.
That explains that. But I assume that typically it's probably more expensive.
I mean, it depends on the client. I mean, in our case, we're traditionally going to be managing more revenue on an annual basis than most of our clients. We've done work for large companies here in Cabarrus County that have chosen to do OSIPs because they can buy it more competitively than we can. In the case of the county, that was not the case.
Gotcha. So we talked a lot about the advantages of construction manager at risk, but what would you say are some of the disadvantages or maybe some of the negatives
Yeah.
with doing it that way?
I would say it's type of project. Michael talked about this in the first part of his presentation. There needs to be a fit. You know, if you're doing a $500,000 renovation that's going to take 4 months and the design's complete, you're going to buy that design bid build. You're going to buy that in a lump sum format because that's the way you should do it. If you've got a complex job, multiple users that are going to touch it, multiple phases, something that's in a tight, constrained location, any of those types of reasons, a CM at risk method, a design build method, any of those methods are going to get a contractor on board earlier, which is a net benefit to your end product because you've got somebody who's bought in, right? They're trying to bring those best practices and drive value to a budget or below that budget.
Yeah, and we had done it, when I was on the school board, we had done several of the schools with the construction manager at risk too. I think that was the first time that we had really done that as well, and it actually worked out,
And those are big, complex
turned out
jobs,
good.
right? Those are
You know,
big,
so-
complex jobs.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's the complexity, it's not necessarily the value. Like, we did see them at risk on the skylight replacement here. So that was a very complex slash logistical challenge where we kept the
Right.
building open the entire time and basically cut a big hole in the roof and covered it back up.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
So
Thank you.
logistics and complexity are a big deal.
I just want to point out, I'm glad to see that we don't do the shared savings program, because no reflection on y'all or any other particular company, but I could see how some companies would be led to use inferior materials, you know, if it were the shared savings program.
Yeah, traditionally, the spec's going to require a certain level of material anyway, but I can see where there's a perception that it can be a negative, and the county doesn't do that, most of our clients don't do that.
I would say for my 2 cents worth, county, keep not doing that.
Jason, I just want to say thank you for coming. For the last few years, you've always showed up, been very transparent, answered every question we have. I know you have a busy life too, so just thank you for always being
No
willing
problem.
to come by and clear things up for
Yeah,
us.
sure thing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, next, we have the county manager about a co-location proposal with Allen Volunteer Fire Department.
If I can, there we go. As Jason makes his way up, and I think Jacob, and so we have been approached by the Allen Volunteer Fire Department about some potential co-location opportunities, so I'll let the three of them take it away on that front for discussion with all five of you.
Sure, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you. Let me see if I can, here we go. I have with me Fire Marshal Jacob Thompson and Randy Dozier, who's the fire chief at Allen Fire Department as well. We have a unique opportunity. Allen Fire Department approached us about the construction and build of a second fire station off of Miami Church Road. These opportunities don't come along very often when we get a request for a co-location with county services. One of our strategic items within the Fire Services Division, mainly Squad 410, and for those that may not know what that specifically is, Squad 410 is a 24-hour full-time firefighting unit that the county provides supplemental services to our volunteer and combination fire departments throughout Cabarrus County, primarily focused on the east side of the county. Pretty much everything east of I-85 is the response area for this particular unit. But they had approached us about a potential co-location. That was in our future planning to try to co-locate with a fire station. We're currently housed at EMS Station 2. They're off of Highway 49 across from Central Cabarrus High School, and we're certainly appreciative of the partnership with our EMS division. However, ultimately, the goal is to get the squad program into a fire department-related facility. and feel like we have an opportunity to potentially do that as we kind of discuss through that. We'd like to kind of just turn it over to maybe Fire Chief Dozier to kind of run through a few things with the project and how we kind of got to this point.
Kind of where we are with the project already, we've completed the clearing and grading of the property and the erosion control. Our building committee will meet this week with contractors to select a contractor for the project. We have a drawing from DP3 architects that we'll use for that, and have financing through Pinnacle Bank for the project. What we're looking at is 3,000 square feet will go to Squad 410 for their area, which will include a bay, expanded day room for all personnel, expanded kitchen area, 2 extra bathrooms and an office, and having Squad 410 with us will add an extra $1 million to the project.
So I think to add a little bit of context, one of the purposes of the station being added, just to kind of bring back to kind of Alan's purposes of adding that station, is it Joe Bost or Cal?
Yeah, Joe Boss.
Joe Boss Road and Miami Church Road. So Joe Boss Road has some area that's outside of the ISO Class 5 rating, or the ISO classification in the 5-mile rating. So to give you a little background, anytime the ISO grading schedule is looking at properties, if it falls outside of 5 miles from a fire station, then as long as that fire station has been rated, anything in that 5 miles gets that lower than 9 rating, which includes reduction on insurance premiums for that those properties. So there are some areas that are outside that 5 miles on Joe Boss Road, which is kind of one of the primary driving factors of the station, and then call demand as well. So Alan felt need to add that additional station on Miami Church to try to reduce those ISO ratings for those properties and be able to access those properties in a little bit quicker manner. And that's what kind of brought this opportunity about. One of the driving factors for us for getting the relocation of the squad unit, one is location. So right now, being located at EMS Station 2, they're not really located in a prime situation or a prime location to provide service to all the departments that they need to be providing service to. So the location that where the station is proposed to be located, or where it's going to be located, is closer to all of the fire districts that they serve, with the exception of one. And the one that it would not be closer to is Midland Station 2, which they're staffed 24 hours with paid personnel anyway, so it's not that much of a detriment. And it's just because right now they can kind of meander through the countryside and get over to Midland Station 2, where being over closer to Miami Church Road, it just kind of changes some location things for them, which would extend time. But they're closer to every other department that they serve or service at that new location. That's always been kind of the one concern for us, is that even where they are now, they're inside the city limits of Concord, which is not a place that they currently respond to. So they're located somewhere that they don't currently respond to, which to us, again, when the program was put in place and they were chose to locate there, it was kind of a quick term option. It wasn't something that was intended to be a long-term solution at that point. It wasn't the best location. It wasn't the best living quarters, and I don't think long-term it really satisfied the needs of the program. And so, of course, anytime we have an opportunity to come up like this that does satisfy some of the needs of the program, when we look at the fire study that was done several years ago that identified that this was one of the things that needed to happen at some point, was get them in a location that really supported the program and fulfilled some of the needs of our personnel. And so when we saw this opportunity come about, and Alan approached us about that, we definitely wanted to get it in front of you for your consideration.
Thanks for making the presentation. Early on, after we were elected last year, Matt there at Allen was pretty quick to contact me. He played football with my boys years ago. But, so he got hold of me right away and had me come, and they talked to me about it, and they talked to Commissioner Lindsay about it as well. And the main impression I had was that concern was to provide adequate coverage, some distance between separate stations. I think Mount Pleasant they mentioned, and all, that there was a lot of distance that it's hard to cover, and they needed this for better coverage. And so they sold me on it back then, but I appreciate your presentation.
Sean, do we have the money available for this?
We,
Or are we able to shift it somewhere to get it?
so we have a few projects closing out in our PayGo account right now that we could likely identify savings from those projects, slash, as we move towards closing out this fiscal year, we obviously will have the surplus funds there that will need to be directed by the commissioners. So there's likely funds for a project like this available if the 5 of you so choose to pursue it.
So I have a couple questions. Is there, so I've heard potential talk that there was at some point going to be another fire station on Walker Road. Is that still in the plans?
It's been discussed several times. I think from the last update that I had, don't quote me on this, the last update that I had gotten from Chief Sneed there was that the kind of the water line project out there and some of the money that the county was, or that the town was having to front, the town of Mount Pleasant was having to front to offset some of the grant funds. I don't think that really panned out the way that they wanted it to. I think was going to prolong some of those projects. I don't think it's anything that they're looking at a definitive timeline on. It's going to happen in the next 5 years, 3 years, anything like that. I think it's something that is in their like-to-do list. It's something that they want to do in the future. I don't know that they have a definitive timeline on when they're looking to make that happen.
Because from my understanding, so Squad 410 was potentially maybe going to go out to that fire department.
There's never
In
been
conversation.
There's always been conversations with what are the potential locations, what departments, even the fire study. When the fire study was done in late 2018, 2019, even then they identified what were the potential fire station locations, what departments were entertaining building fire stations at the time. Mount Pleasant was one. Even then, I don't think Allen had a definitive timeline on theirs, and so it wasn't even included in the fire study. Midland had identified a potential additional station on 601. There were several other departments that said, hey, these are our plans. All of those potential station locations were included in the fire study, even though none of them had definitive timelines or definitive plans. So any and all of those departments, at some point or the other, we've had conversations with them saying, you know, what's your thoughts? Are you looking to do this? And those same conversations have happened with Mount Pleasant. We've had conversations with them to say, what's your timeline? What's your thoughts? And it's really us trying to plan on what are our opportunities, what are our possible avenues to achieve this goal moving forward. If you look at and I don't have it to show you, and I can show you offline or something and pull up the map. There was a definitive mean that was pulled as far as if you had to look at all the responses for the squad, and where does the definitive mean, mathematical mean of where is the distance on the precise optimal location for them to reach all of the calls that they've ran. It maps somewhere near close to where the Allen station is proposing to be located. Now, you can look at that in different ways. If you look at all the calls that they run, the definitive mean comes up to that location. We're close to where Allen's going. Part of it's not an argument, it's not a good adjective to use, the descriptive discussion, but the other conversation that's always been had is that if you're looking in favor of the Mount Pleasant Station location, that more of the northern departments have more of a staffing need because they don't have the budget to staff 24 hours a day, which they all staff 24 hours a day, just not to the level that some of your more southern departments like Allen or Mount Pleasant do because they have the budget to, Allen or Midland do because they have the budget to staff 6 people 24 hours a day. So they would, the people that would argue in that corner would say that the greater need is farther north in the county, and so that the Mount Pleasant location would be a better location to serve the departments that have more of the definitive need. So it can be looked at either way, but when you look at the calls that they run, as far as you take the addresses and you put them in a list and you say, what is the optimal location for them to access all of those locations from the best geographical spot. It is, when you look at the map, it doesn't map far from where Allen is building their station, probably within 1 nautical mile. So, yes, we've had conversations with multiple departments to answer that question, but as far as location, depends on what your preference is, so.
And with this potential, or, I mean, it's being built, it's already graded, so with that location, do you guys anticipate that Georgeville or Mount Pleasant is going to lose any of their area, and you guys would take that area?
So that would totally be a decision that you guys make. The building of a fire station doesn't automatically necessitate the adjustment of district lines. Right now, there's nothing in ordinance that requires you to approve a fire station location. So anytime somebody goes to build a new fire station, it doesn't require approval of the commissioner. So and this is always something that we stay wary of, is that if a fire department goes and builds a station location, there's always the possibility that they could go and petition the residents to say, now we have this new station, please approach the commissioners to have the district realigned in favor of the new station. With that being said, and we'll talk about it as we look at new contracts and new ordinances in the not so distant future, is that one of the things that we're going to talk about is whether or not that's something that you guys want to entertain, is approval of any new fire station, so that we make sure that it falls within the county's planning jurisdiction and that you're aware of those things before it comes to you, because it's very, I won't say it's likely, but there's a potential that since Allen has put up this station, it is going to be closer to the district line than what their current station is, that you could have residents that come to you and say, I've got this station that's closer to me now than Mount Pleasant, we want to be moved. So that the potential for that discussion is always there, and it's something that you guys have to make that decision
And that
whenever
would
the time
affect
comes.
their budget, right? Like Georgeville and Mount Pleasant, that would affect their budget. So they might potentially have to raise the fire tax in that community because we would be switching.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a free agent question, so to speak, and you guys always have the control on where those fire district lines fall. Where right now, there's not an approval process for somebody to build a fire station, so you see
It's I mean,
You see the
like,
concern that
it's
could.
basically leaves you no option because we don't get a say in whether or not it's built, but then we have to decide whether or not what community is going to have the higher fire tax
Yeah.
or the ISO.
And you can see the
rating.
downstream effects of that. If Allen builds a station within a mile of the district line and then you adjust fire district boundaries because of that, then who's to say that Georgeville or Mount Mitchell or whoever says, well, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to go up and build a fire station, a half mile from the district line and force the commissioners to move fire district lines. And so that does have a downstream effect. So like I said, right now, there's nothing in place that requires a fire department to get approval for those new station locations. But it is in your wheelhouse to approve any fire district changes, so,
Okay, thank you.
yes, ma'am.
The other side of that argument is most people typically don't care whose name is on the side of the truck when they're having an emergency. They want the closest truck there, no matter who it is. I can respect that, because if that was my house, I would want the closest truck there to get there. So there's two sides of that argument as well.
Correct.
So,
Do we need to move this to an action item for the next meeting?
I would say yes.
Alan approached us several weeks ago, so we've worked through the potential possibilities here for the expansion side of so we can certainly bring that to the regular session if you'd like that as an action item.
Did you make that motion? To move to the,
I'll make a motion
all right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, it passes 4-0. Put it on the action calendar for next meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. All right, next we have boards and committees. The first one is Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee. Anybody have any issues with that, or can we move that to consent agenda for next meeting? All right, the Committee for the Partners Health Management. Any issues on that, or can we move it to consent agenda? Okay. Next one is the Public Health Authority of Cabarrus County. I believe Commissioner Lindsay will be reappointed on that. All right, anybody have any issues? We'll move that to consent agenda. All right, next we have the County Manager and the reappropriation. Any discussion on that, or can we move that to consent agenda, or you want it on action agenda for next meeting?
We do have Rosh here if you have any questions about the line items, if folks had a chance to look at them. He's available. We both worked with all of the department heads, and we have the departments here to represent any ones that you may have questions about too. I'll say anecdotally, not having been through the reappropriation process the past few years, I believe the comments from the commissioners have been, let's try and keep that to a minimum and be intentional about them. So the staff has definitely taken that into consideration. I think this year's is about $4 million less than last year's. Several of them are grants as well that just haven't cleared by the end of the fiscal year or so. But happy to answer any questions that y'all may have about them.
I had a question on page 28, the COVID broadband. That's an awful lot of money. What exactly does that entail, and why do we need it?
During COVID, there was a push from the state to do a broadband expansion throughout the state. So potentially that money will not be needed because they have either canceled or they're paying for all those projects out of pocket. So we are waiting for confirmation from the state to know that we don't owe any money to them, but those contracts had all been signed a year and a half ago.
Well, I'd like to see us do something else with that money, so we need to be looking toward that.
That is-
May have to wait on actually taking action on it, but let's do something else with that money, please.
Yep. So that was the plan, is to reappropriate it to ensure that we don't owe, as part of our contract, that we owe any of that money for those broadband expansion projects. But there are a lot of rural areas across this area that are getting those expansion, from private providers.
Well, and I can just say from personal experience, when it comes to COVID, all you need is ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, we've probably mislabeled that. I think that started as a COVID project, but those are actual county dollars. So if the state determines that we are not liable for any of those dollars, it does come back all to the general fund. So it's not going to roll back to the Fed at all.
Good.
Those are local dollars for us to spend on those needed projects that, the stuff that you just heard about.
Appreciate it.
Broadband was identified as a need for the county when the schools closed because the lack of internet, though. Is that?
Yeah, nationwide, broadband was a need and I think that was part of it, but it was also one of the few technology, COVID uses for that money. And I think the reason that it's local dollars is we were able to basically switch some dollars around during the COVID time with overtime overtime that we were paying for law enforcement and some other stuff. So it ended up being a swap so that we can hold those as, because we knew those projects were going to not happen really quick. So, and anybody's probably all know that all those COVID, projects have to be completed by the end of, I believe it's 26. So there was a chance that these might not happen. So I think the intention of the previous management team was to shift some funds around to make this happen and keep the projects funded.
You know when you'll know, or?
I hope to know in the next, I would say 6 weeks or so. I'd love to tell you it'd be in 2 weeks, but I am, yes, pragmatic maybe.
I just like to say for reallocation of that money, when we get to do it, I'd like the top priorities on that, or my two top priorities, which is sheriff's office and the public safety.
Any other issues on that? Move that to consent agenda. All right. Next is community development. And I can even say it, the Heat and Heart Grant Award acceptance.
Good evening. The first item that we have this evening for you, if you'll remember back in late January, we came to the board and we asked for permission to go ahead and apply for community development grants this year. We found out just recently that we did receive that money. So now this is the formal step to accept the money. And we also will have to do a budget amendment to adjust the funds because our budget process happened so early. We do have to estimate based on averages over the years of what those dollars may be. So we were fortunate and we received more money than we thought we were going to. So both of those programs would need to be adjusted. And for those of you who may not know, this is Robert Anderson, and we are both here to answer any questions you may have about the programs.
Acceptance of 911 fund expenditures. Oh, one more grant, that's right. You got another.
We do.
Yeah.
So we were contacted in, I believe it was March-ish. The legislators approved some additional funds to be spent in Western North Carolina for the weatherization program. Because Cabarrus County was part of that disaster declaration for Helene, we were awarded some additional funding. That was not included in our ask in the winter. So we are in front of you to request that we be allowed to accept these funds from DEQ. They will dovetail along with our weatherization program, and hopefully we'll be able to help some more of the residents. And we would need new accounts created because this is completely new money. So it's about $102,000. What is left over, once we kind of go through our projects, we would, send it back to the state for them to use for other eligible recipients that would be in the western area if we aren't able to use all of the funds.
I was just wondering, I hear a lot about how they're way behind on recovery in the western part of the state. I wasn't aware that we had a whole lot of damage from Helene around here. Maybe you can enlighten me on that because I hadn't heard about that. I've heard about the other areas. And where do we stand currently if there is anything that we had to fix around here?
Right, so I will let you know as much as I know, and then Mr. Burnett maybe can add on what he knows. So we have had a very difficult time trying to track down information and numbers as far as insurance claims. When it comes to disaster-related insurance claims, insurance companies and FEMA are very selective about how they share that information. So as best as we can tell, I believe we had one structural damage claim, but a lot of the other claims came from food. It's been difficult with the way that they report, and then again, working with the insurance companies. So the intent for this particular pot of money is weatherization, so to help those people in the West whose homes are still there, either with energy efficiency or using all of the different funds and braiding them together, maybe their HVA system got flooded and they didn't have flood insurance. This would be some additional funding that could go to help those types of things. But it's our understanding from looking at the data that we've been provided that we did not really have a significant number of claims related to either structural damage or flooding from Helene.
Okay, well, thank you for that, because I hadn't heard a lot about it, so I didn't think there was. But if we can take some of what's given to us and help those people out in the western part, that'd be good.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have any.
Sure, and I can echo what Susie had said. The data that we have has been very limited that has come from FEMA. Initially, we had a couple of requests that had come through. We actually had set up a disaster service assistance center in January that FEMA came out to the Milestone building, Milestone Conference Center, and set up for a week there. We had 2 residents or clients that had come through there and identified some damage to their property. Those have since been followed up through FEMA. We did get another list from the state that was pushed. However, based on that, the state or FEMA is going to do the further evaluation on that piece of it to determine if there are any additional claims from Helene itself. But overall, the damage estimates from that have been extremely low in regards to Cabarrus County's impacts to that.
And the interesting thing about these funds is that they're directly tied to the weatherization program. Not just open-ended funds where, if somebody's front porch got knocked off. Like you couldn't use the funds for that. It's specific to things related to that, to the weatherization program.
And to give you something else, so another example is like if somebody had an HVAC system that went out and there's an extensive electrical repair, sometimes we don't have the funds in our weatherization budget to cover that. These funds would allow us to pay for those electrical funds to get them the new HVAC system.
Yeah, and sometimes they call it readiness funds, so it's things that you get a separate pot of money for things that might need, little things that might need to be done before you can actually go in there and start the weatherization process.
Did they give you a time frame in which to utilize the funds before you have to send it back?
We will have, and we think we will have until next December. Originally, they told us it was going to be a 2-year grant program, but now it sounds like really they're shooting for next fiscal year, so that for July to July with potentially a 6-month extension is what they've told us.
Do they have an approval process when we identify a problem situation? You have to notify them that's what it is and they approve it, or they leave that in your discretion whether it classifies as winterization?
We have a document that we have to follow, and if it is not on that list, then we are more than likely not able to implement that fix.
And what we've planned is with the weatherization funds is to try to use these funds first, use what we can to maximize or fix our clients' homes down here, and then get that money shifted to the western half as soon as possible.
Any more questions? Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Everybody good with moving that to the consent agenda? All right, now I'm ready for the Great Sheriff's Department. This is 911 funds.
Yes, good evening. So, as the primary or only recognized PSAP or 911 center of Cabarrus County, the State 911 Board awards us monies to fund that. And what we're asking, they have awarded us an additional $828,210.15. We're asking you to accept that, and that would be utilized to replace console radios, as well as some other projects to basically refurbish our 911 center. Anything to add to that?
Nope, you pretty much summed it up. I mean, it's for furniture and for radio consoles, but the $828,000 is for eligible expenses, and it has to be used within this fiscal year.
Just accepting money.
Any questions?
Nobody ever said no.
Let's knock on wood. Let's
Yeah.
knock on wood.
Okay, Ken.
We've got so you guys need a motion to suspend the rules. That's what this one says.
That would be great, because it has to be completed this fiscal year, just to go ahead and give us the go-ahead to get these projects done. That'd be great.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, suspend the rules, passes 4-0. Now, we have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment as written.
Has a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. He makes it easy.
All right, you're up again.
Yes. So the next item is also acceptance of grant funds. This is the Governor Highway Safety Program grant award, in which we've used really 2 cycles to staff our traffic education and enforcement unit. What we found out, we had just cycled through our 3rd year of the grant. We found out recently that the state will fund a 4th year, and it's a 25% reimbursement of salary when they're doing enforcement items, education items in relation to this grant. So this is acceptance of monies to pay towards salary. There is a budget amendment that basically shows the amount of what that would be from their salaries.
No questions? All right, we're going to move that to consent agenda. All right, thank you so much on that one. I think you're up again.
One final one.
Yes.
It's also a Governor's Highway Safety Program grant, and this is for Bike Safe, which is an educational program. Our officers receive training from these monies to be able to educate the public, basically motorcycle drivers, to keep them safe, reduce crashes, that type of thing. And so they go out into the community, they hold these classes to educate the motoring public there. So it's a $5,000 grant, no match required. And just ask that you accept those funds.
No question. All right, we'll move that to consent agenda.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. All right, next, soil and water, Cabarrus County Creek Week budget amendment.
Hi.
Creek Week.
Cabarrus County Creek Week. Just say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hi, everyone. I work for the local soil and water district. We are trying to implement our first Creek Week. So Creek Week is actually a DEQ initiative that is being passed on to a lot of soil and water districts to promote local water education by hosting a week-long series of events that are supposed to be free for public. And we are doing movie nights, water-themed trivia. We're having a festival at Frank Lisk Park, a litter sweep, location to be determined still at the moment on that, and all sorts of different things. And we have been fortunate enough to receive sponsorship from Concord, the Subaru in Concord. And I'm just here to ask for a budget amendment so we can create an expense account for that.
Anybody have any questions on that? All right. So we'll move that to consent agenda for our next meeting.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the water sewer grant application for North Carolina Agricultural Development and Farmland Trust Fund. Up there she is, all right.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Also with the Soil and Water Conservation Office, and one of our main goals is farmland preservation in Cabarrus County. Around this time of year, annually, we have historically worked on some applications for conservation easements, which is one way to protect farmland. The applications are starting in the fall, typically due at the end of the year. So I'm here for my annual trip to ask for those permission to apply for those grant funds through the North Carolina Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund.
Anybody got any questions on that?
Not a question, but I just wanted to say that I serve on the Soil and Water with these two ladies, and I love what you guys do. I'm learning more and more about it, but it's good work, and I really appreciate you guys applying for these grants for this.
All right, we'll move that to consent agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tax Administration, the South Carolina Debt Set-Off Resolution and Memorandum.
Good evening, Commissioners. So we're here tonight asking for your approval of a resolution for us to utilize the South Carolina Debt Set-Off Program, which is a program very similar in North Carolina that we've been using for many years to help us collect delinquent taxes. It's another tool in our toolbox to do so. We have an opportunity to do the same with South Carolina. So if we identify folks that are delinquent on taxes and we have some reason to believe that may have property or business in South Carolina, we could submit them to that same program that we would in North Carolina. If they were ever to have tax refunds or lottery winnings, those funds could then be applied to those delinquent taxes. What you have before you is the resolution prepared by, and Mr. Hall put that together for us, allows us to go into a memorandum of understanding with South Carolina so we can submit those delinquent taxes and potentially gain some payment from those. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
So just to make sure with notifying these folks, I just want to make sure that we're, again, this is another avenue, yes, to collect money that we're owed, but also, is there a minimum that we would need to have that they would owe in taxes before we would do this? And is there any cost to the taxpayers of our county in order to incorporate this program?
There is a minimum threshold. It's very low. I think it's $25. There's not a cost to us other than the cost to the staff time to submit that to South Carolina. If they recognize that there is funds that come through the state that we have asked for assistance in providing those to us, they then notify that taxpayer that the funds that they're owed have been requested by us. That taxpayer then has an opportunity to ask us for a hearing on whether that is a valid claim, and we can show that at that time. So there is potential cost in the timing of staff time that it may take to go through the process. There is not a fee associated, and there's no additional cost other than delinquent tax to the taxpayer.
So when you say hearing, what kind of?
So if South Carolina, in this instance, if South Carolina notifies someone that we've requested funds and they have, let's say they've won the lottery, South Carolina notifies them that they have a delinquent tax bill, Cabarrus County has asked for that. That taxpayer can request a hearing with our office to contest the validity of that delinquent tax bill, and we will set up a time to meet with them, discuss whether it's a valid tax bill or not. And if it's not, we can reverse that request and make sure they're paid their funds. And if it is, we continue with South Carolina, let them know that, and take that portion of the delinquent taxes.
Gotcha.
The cost is simply a matter of time to go through that process, as with any other delinquent action we take. So. That will also be able to be used by EMS for ambulance fee collection as well. So they do the same for North Carolina. We've used the one in North Carolina for a number of years.
I'm not used to, I've never heard of this either, so I'm just curious. You would think that, I don't know, I guess each government, like if you have money that's owed, they would already have it flagged in a system to notify that person that they owed money in another state. Do they do this besides just North Carolina and South Carolina? Do other states combine those kind of resources and do the same thing, like Georgia and Florida? And
so those states do not, in my understanding, have any method of communicating with each other. There are likely other states that have programs similar to this. We've always utilized North Carolina because of the proximity of our taxpayers here. South Carolina, because of its proximity, makes sense for some. We've not addressed this in other states just because of the lack of potential for collection from other states is rare. So we think South Carolina is an opportunity where we wouldn't probably look to other states. They do not, and other states, and even the state of North Carolina does not generally know when we have delinquent taxes. We have to send a report even to the state of North Carolina, letting them know what we're requesting, as any county or organization would. The same with South Carolina. So that level of communication on just a delinquent balance is not that prevalent.
Will we get some kind of notification from you or a report that says we were able to collect this amount of money?
We can certainly provide that, yeah.
I'm just curious.
Sure, I can get you some figures on that.
I believe it's a reciprocal agreement between South and North Carolina, and they could do it with other states if other states want to participate, but it'd have to be reciprocal.
Sure.
And we only take advantage of the South Carolina one at this time.
Right.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move that to consent agenda. or-
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I need a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda with the changes we made tonight.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No? All right, so it was 4-0. That passes. All right, next I'm going to need a motion to go in closed session per North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A3, 4, and 6, to discuss attorney-client privilege, including a discussion about the Downs versus Cabarrus County lawsuit, to discuss matters related to the location and expansion of industries and other business, and to discuss some personnel matters. So I have a motion to go in closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, passes 4-0. All right, we're in closed session.